Welcome to Blake Today.
Hello guys, welcome back. Your hosts are here today to talk about Blake once again today, and we're going to discuss the book of Urizen and how it is relevant today.
Yeah, so this is one of Blake's prophetic works where he talks about his creation myth, where he kind of retells Genesis. And so we're going to compare it as well to some contemporary pieces, including some of your work, actually.
Yeah, my silly poem.
Yeah, which...
It's quite Blakean in style.
Well, yeah,
I
I'd
attempted.
agree. It's an attempt at a Blakean style.
And we're going to compare it to mostly Milton's ideas of creation and Paradise Lost, and how, the two are different in relation to reason. And yeah.
Yeah, so let's start off by discussing the actual work, right? So we're going to talk about the Book of Urizen to begin with. So the Book of Urizen is essentially Blake's way of criticising the scientific kind of thinking of his time, right? So he has this character called Urizen, and there's a pun there. It's talking about your reason. And he essentially sets this up as an egocentric, cosmic being. Okay, so we changed locations because it's very nice outside. It's a lovely evening. So we just moved it to the canal. And it might be a bit noisy at times, but hopefully it won't be too much background noise. So your reason, which is a stand-in for your reason, is a symbol for the Enlightenment kind of scientific man who's kind of crushes the imaginative spirit in Blake's view.
Yeah, the creativity is... He argues that creativity is stopped through all of the scientific claims, which are non-disputable and dogmatic. And Blake sees this as well when talking of the church. And what's interesting is previously writers such as Milton and thinkers such as St. Augustine saw reason in a very different light as granting freedom, and the just appliance of reason especially as enabling freedom. And this is where freedom is, it's different from free choice. So all humans have the ability to choose whether to do good or evil, but once someone applies their reason in the right way, they can achieve true liberty. And this is a quote from St. Augustine: "The power of using free choice to good purposes is precisely liberty. To be able to do evil is a proof of free choice. To be able not to do evil is also a proof of free choice. But to be confirmed in grace to the point of no longer being able to do evil is the supreme degree of liberty." So it's interesting how different and contrasting this is to Blake, because obviously in your reason is outlined as constricting and stopping creativity. So when do you think at what point does reason become constricting?
Yeah, so I think for Blake, like any kind of discursive reasoning, like in science, like kind of abstracting data, like how Keats says, unweaving the rainbow. So instead of appreciating things as they are, any kind of analysis like that, I think he sees as quite evil. That's from the Blakean perspective, and that's why it's quite the opposite of like in Milton, for instance. Like so, in Blake, you got the sense that the downfall into sinful materiality is because of this figure, your reason, right? And reason is the cause of this fall. Whereas in Milton, that fall is caused by quite the opposite thing, because
temptation, not obeying reason.
Yeah, exactly. It's just pretty much the opposite. And
it's weird though, because reason is painted in Paradise Lost as very kind of governing body. It's almost, there's so many quotes where it's just reason is like is so an authoritative figure.
Yeah, it's the fall from reason, which like God being a figure of reason. The fall from that is what causes the tragedy in Paradise Lost, the fall from grace. But then in the Book of Urizen, William Blake sets up the opposite, where it's actually reason which causes the fall. It's
Maybe too much,
instead of the fall
when it
from
becomes too much reason.
perhaps. I mean, the thing that's the main point I think that is driving home is that when these like scientific figures reason, they drag everyone down away from the freedom that you get from something like imagination. So he sees imagination as the pinnacle of freedom, and I think you can see that in his time period, in the Enlightenment era, the predominant view of the universe among like a lot of scientific circles was deism, which believed that essentially like the universe had been set in motion like clockwork, but there wasn't an involved God or supernatural force that had just set it in motion, like created and then let it run, like similar today to like some like simulation theory or whatever. It's that sort of idea. So a very mechanical universe run just by the Newtonian laws of physics, without any like completely constraining. Right, there's no freedom there. But I think that reason which leads to that, as presented in the Book of Urizen as this destructive, tragic force which brings everything down and causes this great fall, is what Blake is really trying to protest against, in saying that imagination is the way out, the freedom. These visionary experiences that he has is like he's trying to reclaim an imaginative worldview, not one of blind mechanism and the deist conception of the universe.
Yeah, and I guess as you said, it becomes so mechanical that it ignores, when you apply reason too much, it ignores in a way, it almost ignores morality itself, like human, because Milton's idea of applying reason, it was for, like, you get freedom if you apply it for a just cause, to do something right. But I think now, like, when we're talking about the appliance of reason in the Enlightenment, it's more to almost prove a point, to prove how humans are bigger than, nature. Like, it's almost trying to show that, we can, it's not to prove, like, something good, but it's just to prove our authority and our intelligence,
Yeah, like in the scientific mindset, like, yeah, I think you're right. I think it's instead of approaching nature from kind of mystical perspective and taking it in as like a visionary word like Blake, it tries to dissect it and tries to know things, like sets itself up as like, it's very egocentric, isn't it? Like setting itself up as like this know-it-all apprehension of the universe. And not only is science discarded as something problematic for Blake, also religion, because he says in the poem, it is the net of religion, right? So religion and all forms of dogma, whether scientific or religious, are rejected by Blake, and you can see that this divisive, discursive reasoning is very much disparaged, like in this stanza. So times on times he divided and measured space by space in his ninefold darkness, unseen, unknown. Changes appeared in his desolate mountains, rifted furious by the black winds of perturbation. So you can hear in the language divided, measured, and these are very like scientific words, and they could also relate to religion, because it's all about a pretentious like knowing of things, like from a scientific perspective, whereas Blake is more into the mystical and the supernatural.
And also we can see it in the physical text, his shift from reason by his focus on the bodily processes and the physical. In the 5th chapter of the poem, he says, "The globe of life blood trembled, branching out into roots, fibrous writhing up in the winds, fibres of blood, milk and tears. in pangs, eternity on eternity, at length in tears and cries embodied, a female form, trembling and pale, waves before his deathly face. So you can see how body and, fibers of blood, milk and tears, which is just the essence of life and creation and, birth and pain and everything, it's all trembling in front of the deathly face of reason, which has the ability to just take all of that away. And now I think we're gonna move on to my poem.
Yeah.
Yes,
Say it's a poem.
and analyze it. Okay, so we are the stupid ones, smiling in the rain. Held him tight while she left the city on the last train. At midnight he can hear the whistles of pain, her tossing tongue teasing the first letter of his name. So they rain, the leash of desire, root to her fingers, shooter of seeds. In rain hope festers and grows, thick emerald weeds, conceived by no man's seed, our hermaphrodite, our lady of pain, breeds hope and greed. Yet, with pain's departure, day tore the weeds, flung her soul doors open, a white trail she left behind, made of the warm waltz of frocks, a parade led by the lessons of a mother's love, an infinite dance, letting, unbound by time, fresh air through day's doors, critiquing her garden of roses, yet silencing envy's shrills to a tweet when she attempts to join in. With the tyrant gone, day fought her way back, led by the bone-dry cries of rain, salt-heavy skies burned holes in her skin. With other days, frames dried and thirsty were seen, open-mouthed, woman vagrants undoing thy sin. The little schoolboy asked his mother, "Why won't my tomatoes grow? Why, my child, it has not rained for days at all." She bled his tears, gave herself in streams of joy, rusty riverbeds filled with jewels. The boy's tomatoes sparkled bold. His golden girl led him through the green path of her mind, sat him behind the flame of her eyelids. Rain was freed of pain. We bathed in the coquette dance of day, washed by the loving gaze of rain. I can see with your eyes, all is green to me today. Yes, that's the end. So Doug is now going to break down my poem and critique it.
I am. So, I have some questions for you. So, why do you think you saw an affinity when you were reading the Blake poem, when you read the Book of Urizen to your poem? Why do you think that is? Like, what's the kind of influences, even just subconscious influences?
I mean, I think my main influence is just that I kind of characterized Rain as this man, and he was like a person, and then Day was like this innocent girl, and Pain was a more experienced woman who kind of took advantage of Rain. And I think I saw kind of how
Blake also like personified reason and gave it a capital. Like, obviously you can't see.
It's just how they govern, like, all these emotions, like they govern us, and so that was the main thing, how they're like higher beings than people.
And you've capitalized these names, right? Just like how Los and Urizen are characters with capital names. And also love as well as capitalized. So it's quite Blakean in the sense that you personify and give a character to these abstract ideas. So now let's just look at some of the stanzas in the specific language.
Oh wow, okay.
And I
want to
talk about and I want to see like where it's Blakean and the kind of meanings that you're putting into it. So, do you think? First of all, my first question is, before we go into that, do you think there's an overarching narrative of it? Is there a story?
Well, yeah. I mean, there is a kind of, it's interpretive, but I thought about how I was just walking around. It was really rainy and kind of gross, and there was no one out. But I was in a very good mood, and like no amount of rain could shake my good mood. I was in a great mood.
Yeah.
And so I was just trying to think about how rain can be very positive in a way. And so I was thinking about like rain as kind of a heartbroken youth. And then
would you say this is quite like an underground idea?
I don't know. But so Rain is just like heartbroken because Pain left him. She got on that midnight train and she left him alone. So he's very upset without Pain. And and we're like holding him back from going, and because rain and pain, I guess, are associated quite a lot. Yeah.
In poetry, yeah.
Yeah.
And now let's go into one of the stanzas specifically,
Yeah.
which I'm very intrigued by. What does the schoolboy and his mother symbolize, if anything? Or what are some possible interpretations of this stanza? So the little schoolboy asks his mother, "Why don't my tomatoes grow? Why, my child, has not rained for days at all?" She bled his tears, gave herself in streams of joy. Rusty riverbeds filled with jewels. The boy's tomatoes sparkled bold.
Yeah, so it's just about how humans don't have any control over anything, and it's just funny, like, to see. I just kind of zoomed in from the more abstract pain and rain and all of these beings into what's happening on Earth, and how it's just.
Is it almost like an alien from a spaceship zooming in? But
Yeah.
not actually. Like,
Yeah.
So,
It's
like
a-
looking at things from a new perspective, and yeah.
kind of just seeing how there's no tomatoes, and it's because there's no rain, but then they
Yeah.
have no idea what's happening, how it's actually Day managed to get hold back of rain, and she managed
Okay.
to get reunited with him, and he starts to see, she let him see things through her own eyes, and how with her she's like a very bright character, and so he's influenced by that, and then rain becomes almost golden, and the tomatoes sparkle, and everything's like flourishing.
Well, yeah, I mean, she bleeds his tears, gave herself in streams of joy, rusty riverbeds filled with jewels, the boy's tomatoes sparkled gold. So it's an unnatural rain of her tears, right? What exactly, like, do you have any possible interpretations of that?
Was just, she's basically, so Day is crying Rain's tears that he was crying before for pain, so she's kind of taking this nurturing role and just suffering for him to help him, and so he's happy, like she kind of takes the burden from him and puts it onto herself, and then in that way it becomes like nourishing, I guess.
Yeah. Lastly, the final line, "All is green to me today." It reminds me a little bit actually of what we of the Garden of Love, which we had a look at last week, and because obviously it talks about the green space where the chapel is built.
Yeah.
So that's another Blakean influence, maybe even a subconscious influence.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, and my last question is, what do you think the green means to you in this poem? All is green to me today.
I think the green is more just remaining. I mean, it's funny because I talk about all these abstract things, but then the green is just more about staying in the reality and in the present moment, and also kind of going back to an innocent view of things, like kind of not thinking too much about, the abstract, and
So
actually.
not like dividing up things, not dissecting nature, but just appreciating it as it is. Like,
Exactly.
Like how Blake puts forward in the Book of Urizen and in the Garden of Love, that idea again of looking at things as they are, just in the isness of how they are, without having to divide, dissect, and scientifically analyze.
Yeah, so it's without basically looking at nature without putting your own reason and your own.
Yeah.
Which is funny because
Putting
that's
your
exactly
reason.
what I did though. Like I literally just thought, I looked
You did
at
abstract,
nature,
but in a sense,
and
but
I put
you,
my own reason.
but I would say that it was imagination and not reason here. It's
Oh yeah, actually.
yeah,
I agree.
you abstract it using your imagination, but you're not looking. It's not like a scientific analysis or anything like that. So if there is one overarching theme or message that this poem has, like, how would you sum it up? If that's possible, is that not possible?
I mean, one of them could just be how staying grounded in the present and seeing actually what nature, like observationally, can give you rather
Yeah.
than digging.
Just to be and not to know or to pry into things.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's very interesting, and I think that will probably conclude our podcast for today. But
Yes.
if you stick around till next week, we're going to be looking at Aldous Huxley, and hopefully we'll have a very special guest.
I don't know if we will, maybe, but we're gonna look at
Potentially. We have some ideas.
Blake and Huxley, I guess.
Blake's
Yes.
connection to Aldous Huxley. So we should be able to study Aldous Huxley's work, The Doors of Perception, and that actually comes from a quote by Blake, which is,
If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. So, yeah, we'll study that with our expert on pottery.